You know that feeling when someone treats you well, but only when you're useful to them, when the warmth disappears the moment you can't deliver something they need. That shift from valued to invisible happens more often than most people realize, and it's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just a slight change in tone, a conversation that feels different, a response that arrives slower than it used to. Conditional respect operates quietly. It doesn't announce itself. It just recalibrates based on what you can offer at any given moment. And the tricky part is that it can feel like genuine respect for a long time, especially when you're consistently meeting expectations or providing value. The distinction only becomes clear when circumstances change, when you can't do the favor, when you're no longer in the position they need you in, when your utility shifts. This isn't about people being consciously manipulative. Most of the time they don't even realize they're doing it. Conditional respect is often a default pattern, not a calculated strategy. People gravitate toward those who make their lives easier, who validate them, who contribute to their goals. That's human. The problem arises when that's the only basis for the respect they show. When it evaporates the moment the contribution stops. Let me give you a concrete example. You work closely with someone on a project. During that time, they're responsive, engaged, thoughtful. They ask for your input. They acknowledge your ideas. Then the project ends. Suddenly, messages take days to be answered. Your suggestions in meetings get less attention. Invitations to collaborate dry up. Nothing hostile happened. You didn't argue, you didn't fail. You just stopped being immediately useful in the same way, and the respect recalibrated accordingly. Another version. You're in a social group where you're known for organizing things. You plan events, you bring people together, you make things happen. Everyone's friendly, appreciative, involved. Then you go through a busy period and step back for a few months. The invitations slow down. The check-ins disappear. When you do reconnect, the energy is different, polite but distant. You weren't valued for being you. You were valued for what you did. Here's what's happening beneath the surface. Conditional respect is transactional at its core. It's based on an implicit exchange. I respect you because you provide X. When X is present, the respect flows. When X is absent, the respect withdraws. The person offering this type of respect isn't necessarily aware of the transaction. They may genuinely believe they value you, but their behavior reveals the dependency. The respect is tied to a role, a function, a benefit, not to you as a person. This creates a specific emotional dynamic. You start to feel the instability without always being able to name it. There's a subtle pressure to maintain the conditions that keep the respect intact, to stay useful, to keep delivering, to not disrupt the equation. And if you do step back, or if circumstances change, you feel the withdrawal, not as outright rejection, but as a cooling, a fading, a reallocation of attention and energy toward whoever is now occupying the useful role you used to fill. It's worth noting that this isn't the same as people naturally gravitating toward those they interact with most. Proximity influences relationships. Shared projects create closeness. That's normal. Conditional respect is different. It's not just about presence or shared activity. It's about the respect itself being contingent on what you provide. The test is simple. If your role or utility changes, does the respect change with it? So how do you recognize it? Watch for the shift when you're no longer in a position to offer what you used to. This is the clearest signal. If the respect you receive is stable, it won't fluctuate dramatically based on your current usefulness. If it's conditional, you'll notice the change. The tone shifts, the engagement drops, the warmth dims. Notice how people respond when you say no. Conditional respect struggles with boundaries. If someone respects you conditionally, your refusal, even a polite, reasonable one, often triggers a noticeable change in how they treat you. Not always anger or confrontation, sometimes just distance, a coolness, a subtle withdrawal of warmth or availability. Pay attention to who reaches out when you're going through a difficult time. Conditional respect tends to disappear during periods when you're less functional, less productive, less able to contribute. If someone only engages with you when you're at your best, when you're performing well, when you're meeting expectations, that's a pattern worth noting. Observe whether your value to them seems tied to a specific context. Are you respected in the workplace but barely acknowledged outside of it? Are you valued in a group setting but ignored one-on-one? Conditional respect often operates within defined boundaries. Outside those boundaries, it doesn't transfer. Look at how they speak about people who are no longer useful to them. This is revealing. If someone casually dismisses or devalues people who used to be in their circle but no longer serve a function, that's likely how they'll treat you if your role changes. People tend to apply the same relational patterns across different contexts. Notice if the respect feels performative in front of others but absent in private. Conditional respect is often socially motivated. It's about maintaining an image, a network, a reputation. In public settings, the respect is visible. In private, it's minimal. The difference between how someone treats you when others are watching versus when it's just the two of you can be stark. Check whether they're curious about you beyond what you can do for them. Do they ask about your life, your thoughts, your experiences in ways that aren't connected to what you provide? Or is every conversation ultimately about the thing you contribute? Conditional respect rarely involves genuine curiosity. It's focused, narrow, transactional. Here's a subtle variation. They remember you when they need something, but not otherwise. Months of silence, then a message asking for a favor, a connection, advice, help. Once that need is met, the silence returns. The pattern repeats. The respect only activates when there's something to gain. Another microsignal: they don't defend you when you're not there. If someone respects you genuinely, they'll speak up for you in your absence. They'll correct misrepresentations, challenge unfair criticisms, acknowledge your contributions. Conditional respect doesn't do that. It's passive. It doesn't invest in protecting your reputation when there's no immediate benefit to doing so. Watch how they respond to your success versus your struggle. Conditional respect often celebrates your wins because they reflect well on the relationship or provide some advantage, but it's notably absent during setbacks. There's no support when things go wrong, no encouragement when you're rebuilding. The respect is only present when you're winning. Notice if they keep score. Conditional respect often comes with an implicit ledger. They remember what they've done for you. They bring it up, directly or indirectly. They expect reciprocity. The relationship feels like an ongoing calculation rather than a natural exchange between people who value each other. And here's one that's easy to miss. They're highly attentive to changes in your status. If your position, influence, or resources shift, their behavior shifts with it. Promotion, more attention. Setback, less. New opportunity, suddenly more available. Conditional respect is status sensitive. It recalibrates based on where you are in hierarchies they care about. What makes this pattern particularly disorienting is that it can coexist with genuinely positive interactions. The person may be kind, helpful, even generous within the parameters of what they need from you. The warmth is real in those moments. The problem is that it's not stable, it's circumstantial. Let's talk about what not to do. When you recognize this pattern, don't try to re-earn the respect by overcompensating. The instinct when you feel conditional respect fading is to double down, to prove your value, to become more useful. This doesn't solve the problem, it reinforces it. You end up trapped in a cycle of proving yourself to someone whose respect was never based on who you are in the first place. Don't confront them expecting acknowledgement. Most people offering conditional respect don't see it that way. They believe their behavior is normal, justified, or based on changing circumstances. Confrontation often leads to defensiveness, denial, or rationalization. They'll explain why they've been busy, distracted, overwhelmed. They won't see the pattern you're pointing out. Don't assume it's personal in the sense of being about your worth. Conditional respect is about the other person's framework, not your value. They treat everyone this way, or at least everyone who occupies a similar relational category. Recognizing that can reduce the sting without requiring you to accept the behavior. Don't stay hoping it will change. Conditional respect is deeply embedded. It's not usually something people outgrow without significant self-awareness and intentional change. If someone has treated you this way consistently, the pattern is unlikely to shift just because you want it to. Don't mirror the behavior to teach them a lesson. Becoming transactional in return doesn't create the relationship you actually want. It just creates two people treating each other conditionally. If that's not the dynamic you value, don't adopt it strategically. So how do you respond more effectively? Recognize it as information, not indictment. When you identify conditional respect, you're gathering data about the relationship. It tells you what the relationship is and what it isn't. That's useful. It allows you to adjust your expectations and your investment accordingly. Reduce your reliance on their validation. If someone's respect is conditional, their approval will always feel unstable. The less you depend on it for your sense of worth or security, the less disruptive their behavior becomes. You can interact with them without needing them to see you a certain way. Set boundaries around what you're willing to offer. You don't have to make yourself useful to maintain a relationship. If that's the only thing holding it together, it's not a relationship worth maintaining at the cost of your autonomy. You can be helpful when it aligns with your values and capacity, but not as a strategy to secure respect. Observe without resentment if possible. Resentment keeps you engaged in the emotional dynamic. Observation allows distance. You can notice what's happening without needing to change them or punish them for it. This creates space to make clearer decisions about how much access they have to your time and energy. Invest more deeply in relationships where the respect is stable. Once you recognize conditional respect, it becomes easier to identify its opposite. People who value you consistently, regardless of what you can do for them. Those are the relationships worth prioritizing. They're the ones that sustain you. Communicate your boundaries clearly when necessary. You don't need to explain the full analysis of their behavior, but you can be direct about what you're available for and what you're not. "I'm not able to help with that right now" doesn't require justification. Neither does "I need to step back from this for a while." Clear boundaries protect you without requiring the other person to understand or agree. Let the relationship find its natural level. Some relationships are meant to be functional, limited, context-specific. That's not inherently wrong. The issue arises when you're expecting depth and stability from a relationship that was never built for that. If you let it be what it is, professional, occasional, surface level, it stops feeling like a betrayal. Here's what often surprises people. Once you stop trying to maintain conditional respect, you feel lighter. The constant effort to stay useful, to remain relevant, to keep the approval flowing, it's exhausting. When you release that, you reclaim energy you didn't realize you were spending. It's also worth understanding the psychological cost of conditional respect over time. When you're regularly exposed to it, you start internalizing the instability. You begin to measure your worth by your utility. You feel anxious when you're not contributing, not producing, not meeting expectations. You lose touch with the idea that you could be valued simply for existing, for being who you are, for showing up as yourself. This creates a specific kind of relational fatigue. You're never quite sure where you stand. You're always monitoring the temperature of the relationship, looking for signs of cooling or warming. You're performing, managing, adjusting. The relationship never feels restful. It never feels secure. And there's another layer. Conditional respect trains you to tolerate less than you deserve. If you grow accustomed to being valued only when you're useful, you stop expecting anything different. You accept relationships that require constant proof of worth. You settle for interactions that feel precarious because that's what you've learned to navigate. The pattern also tends to cluster. People who offer conditional respect often surround themselves with others who operate the same way. It becomes a relational ecosystem where everyone is constantly assessing utility, trading favors, managing social capital. If you're in that environment, it can feel like that's just how relationships work. It's not. One of the more subtle consequences is how it affects your willingness to ask for help. If you know someone's respect is conditional on what you provide, you become reluctant to show up with needs. You don't want to disrupt the balance. You don't want to become a burden. So you stay self-sufficient, even when support would be valuable. You protect the relationship by not testing it. There's also the tendency to misread stability. If someone has been conditionally respectful for years, if the conditions have been consistently met, the relationship can feel solid. It's only when something changes, a job shift, a life transition, a shift in capacity, that the foundation reveals itself. What looked like loyalty was actually consistency of circumstance. Here's what matters most. Recognizing conditional respect doesn't mean you have to cut people off, confront them, or create drama. It means you see the relationship clearly. You understand its limits. You adjust your expectations. You protect your energy. And you make space for relationships where the respect doesn't require maintenance. Because here's the truth. Some people will respect you because of what you are, and some will respect you because of what you do. The difference is everything.